OTB's The Hurling Pod with James Skehill and Paul Murphy.
Tá craobhna here in an Ashangailov. People of Galway, we love you.
I don't want to leave the people of Waterford down, you know, because they're my life, you know. People of Waterford are my life, you know, and I love me county, you know.
We love John Malone.
It's almost like they're afraid to kind of go on hurl and just let themselves express themselves. It's like as if they're nearly afraid to make a mistake, and sometimes you have to make a mistake and just throw off that bit of nervousness and have a go.
Yeah, it's pure constipated hurling.
You are very welcome along to episode 1 of season 2 of the Hurling Pod. We are back slightly later than planned, but the more things change, the more they feel the same. After the first weekend of the Hurling League, Limerick beaten on the opening weekend after a strong second half comeback from Cork, who again have impressed early doors. Wayward shooting from Wexford in their defeat against Galway. Some spiky comments from Davy Fitz after the discussion that was kicked off last week about how valuable the national leagues are. And to talk about all of this, I'm delighted to say, back again for season 2, we got Paul Murphy and James Skehill. Lads, how are you getting on?
How you going, lads?
Good, how's everything?
I think it's fair to say, Skehill, we are back by popular demand. I was a little bit surprised by the messages that were coming through last week. This is largely my fault that we're back late. I was trying to move around my working week the last couple of weeks. I had every intention, in a perfect world, episode 1 of season 2 was going to be the week after the club hurling final. Then we'd have loads of time to kind of lay out a big league preview, and then this would have been episode 3 where we were looking back at the start of the league. But like everything, we're fashionably late coming back, despite the fact that lots of people wanted us to come back.
And I know the reason we're fashionably late too. It was difficulty in signing Murph up to season 2.
I was going to say the same about you.
I got in there before you. So I said I'd do it. Yeah, because I knew it was coming. Out of one ye.
Were there counter offers this year, Murph, to go and join a podcast late again, or what happened there?
No. My offers are few and far between these days. A few small footballing podcasts, but I think I'm just going to stick to the hurling ones.
Football.
A junior footballing podcast. That's what we're going to start up, yeah.
That's what I was wondering. Are you still going to play junior football this year with Kilkenny?
Yeah, the plan is at the moment to go and do it again. Really just enjoyed it last year, to be honest. There's no other major reason, and I suppose, yeah, the lads were just calling around there to see who was still going again this year, as opposed to the older lads. But yeah, the intention is to play this year, and we'll see once we get back into training now, even with the club, just how the body feels again. Being realistic, trying to keep both of them going. But no, yeah, the plan is to play again this year.
And does the season work out more roughly the same as last year again, where the Kilkenny Championship stuff would be quite early, and therefore you go off and play county afterwards? Is it still shaping up that way this year?
Yeah, so the football kicked off this weekend in Kilkenny, and that'll play off up until about April, I suppose. And after that, again, it gives the management a chance to go around to a few of the games and maybe pick up a few new lads, see how lads are playing as well. So it's great, yeah, it's great to get back playing the football now, and it's a great way to blow out the legs as well. There's a lot of cobwebs there after the winter, so I think a lot of lads are using it as well, just to get the bit of mileage back into the legs at the start of the year. And
for you, Skehill, your involvement this year, you're going to be back with the Galway minors again, are you?
Yeah, correct, yeah. So I more kind of a full-time role integration into the whole kind of management side of things, whereas last year it was just the goalkeeping coach. I could dip in and out of sessions if you like. So but we're in the midst of it now, so it's nice and it's enjoyable too. It's much different to playing, obviously, but it's grand to try pass whatever bit of wisdom and knowledge you have onto young guys, and they're all like sponges. They just soak it up, you know what I mean? So you're just hoping you give them the right message.
Yeah, and you were in watching that and Rise win in the Connacht Schools of the weekend as well.
Yeah, so they bet St. Ray Fields on Saturday. Really good game actually. It's so I had forgotten it's under 19. So some of the guys I was watching were playing for the Galway 20s last year. Some of the guys who were there, we had in the minors last year. So there's an awful lot of quality, and I suppose the Prez and Rayfields are the two. I'd probably call them the dominant schools in Galway, where they have a big catchment area both. So there's a lot of clubs involved in both schools, and they produce an awful lot of talent, both of them. So Prez nicked it in the end. In fairness, they probably had the better side, so they're moving onwards, heading towards. I think Rayfields are playing Kieran's next, and then the Prez are waiting for who comes out of the other side of the Leinster. Yeah, so it's a good championship.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously there's lots of arguments. Offaly Schools won the Leinster at the weekend, beating Kieran's College, and it was effectively the Offaly minor team. I had to probably fight a lot of people off on Twitter during the weekend saying this is a complete disgrace that they're allowed to play. And look, it's clear that Offaly pulled a little bit of a stroke on this one, because Colossionev Cormac and St Brendan's Community School, who'd be two of the main 6 schools that were providing players into that team, are playing the lower championships. Brendan's are gone through to the B final in the Leinster and may well be at A next year, but that opportunity was there. They were able to use their minor management from last year to manage this team, and effectively I think 13 of the 15 starters were starters in the All-Ireland final last year against Tipperary. So they went in, combined, and tried to just maybe keep that team playing together for a little bit longer before some of them will graduate up to under 20 over the next couple of seasons. So they saw that opportunity, and the 3 teams who got to the semi-finals along with Offaly schools are all going to progress into the All-Ireland series and are still in contention for the Harty Cup. So I don't know, to a certain extent, when you see that Kieran's College are still drawing the lads in their panel from Waterford, Carlow, Laois as well as Kilkenny, you're starting to think that maybe it's not quite as imbalanced as it might look on paper, but let the arguments continue on that. And the final in Munster for the Harty Cup, 7,000 people in there, and Clonmel winning, and you have a couple of crazy stories there over the last couple of seasons. And I don't know, I mean, the schools hurling seems to have really ignited quite a bit of interest in the weekend just gone by. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go through the season. But maybe we might kick off kind of for general talking points about the weekend just gone by with the 2 games on Saturday, because Murph, combined between Wexford Park and Páirc Uí Chaoimh, best part of 30,000 people were there. 20,000 people were in at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Bit of excitement with the lights now in Wexford Park, and even though they had to start the game 15 minutes late, there was that bit of buzz about those 2 games. They're both on the TV as well. And we were treated to 2 games where there were big second half comebacks. We might start with Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because at half time, the pundits had written Cork off entirely. They weren't doing enough. They weren't working hard enough. They upped that work rate in the second half, 40 tackles between tackles, blocks and hooks that led to turnovers in the second half, which was a big improvement. They scored 2 goals, and Cork came back and beat Limerick in the end.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it was really a game of 2 halves where first half you just couldn't see really where Cork were going to capitalise on anything. I mean, for me, a big thing that I saw with them was just the runners coming through the centre for Limerick. They just weren't being tracked back, which is really the forwards' job for Cork to be tracking back the midfielders and cutting off these runs that are coming through. But in the second half, they were completely different. And, probably typified by Patrick Horgan's block, towards the end of the second half, where even the likes of him was back there. It was a completely different attitude, a complete shift from Cork. And the stat speaks for itself in terms of the tackles, the hooks and the blocks. It's something, over the years we would probably have said about Cork, where when you give them the space and they're allowed hurl, that they'll do great things, and they've all great hurlers and play a lovely style of hurling. But then there was maybe question marks over them over the last few years in terms of actually just getting into the nitty gritty of going toe to toe with a team. Like they did it last year in Walsh Park against Waterford when they really needed to do it. But in the second half against Limerick, I mean, not to out-muscle Limerick, but certainly, go toe-to-toe with them is a serious thing to be able to do. And one thing that was noticeable about Cork is they're an extremely physical team, like noticeably throughout the pitch. They've really bulked up, and some of the players that they've introduced as well are really big men. And, it's an important thing. It's not to be all and end all, but certainly important if you want to go and beat the likes of Limerick. Physicality is going to come into it. But really, it was just, the second half was excellent. It was completely different from the first half, but it was excellent. A few of the scores were brilliant. Kieran Joyce's was probably the pick of the scores, mainly through the play that happened previous to it. But look, again, Cork were running at Limerick. They were down, I think, about 4 minutes to go, 3 points down, and didn't give up. So there was a few things there that Pat Ryan will be looking at going, this is really good. And these are characteristics that maybe have been absent in Cork for a few years, and they've showed glimmers of it. But the thing is now is to, I suppose, put a string of performances together that show these characteristics week on week. Yeah,
it's all about backing it up, Skehill. But if you consider Limerick only got 6 points in the second half, Robbie O'Flynn was crucial, obviously, to the comeback before he went off, and it appears he's dislocated his ankle. He's to have more scans later this week, but lovely pinpoint finish for his goal, and he had a big hand in the second goal too, and that got Cork right back into the game, and they kind of pushed on from that momentum. And as Murph just mentioned there, they made sure they were still in the fight towards the end of the game. They finished strongly, and Shane Kingston splits the points for that very late winning point. But they'd have to be happy with the change that they were getting up front in the second half there.
I think so, yeah. Like, I know, just to go back to Murph's point for where he was saying about the runners, like it's like Cork just, they wanted to engage physically with Limerick and go into all the huddles and rucks, etc., and then forgot about the runners on the outside. and they played with a 3-man full forward line for a lot of the whole first half, if you like. And if you notice in the second half, they split into like a line individually, if you notice. So one guy was inside in the parallelogram all the time. So that was predominantly Horgan, you could say. And then they were kind of a straight line draw from 14 to 11. So they created an ocean of space, but also had numbers. And it just looked like systematically they weren't trying to match Limerick in every department like they have been in the past. They've always tried to match them physically, match them in the air, and Limerick are just too dominant in that area. So for them to kind of come with a different angle and then defeat Limerick would be extremely, I suppose, satisfying, if you like, for Ryan's first game. And huge crowd, like 20,000 people for a league game was unexpected, in my opinion. I don't think I ever played for 20,000 in a league game, but so obviously there's always ambition in Cork, and so there's a bit of positivity around the new management team and whatnot, and they have 1 million hurlers, so it's just a case of putting the right mix together. And Murph is 100% correct too on the physicality side of things. They just looked really impressive physically. Looked like not even their tackling, let's say, but just when you look at them as specimens, they have work done over the winter, and they were putting it to good use.
Yeah, like James, we've spoke so many times last year about puck-out strategies, and sometimes they can be very complex, and Limerick are really good at mixing it up. One thing I noticed just watching the first half at the weekend in Páirc Uí Chaoimh was that Limerick got a tremendous amount of change from just putting the ball down onto Hegarty. Like, he won so much of their puck-outs.
Yeah, and I still, when you watch Limerick from behind the goals, if you like, and watch usually Nicky Quaid, obviously, they always come in the middle and then shoot out, to the wing where Hegarty and Kyle Hayes or these people get so much change. And that happened again in the first half the last day. And I just think Cork had to look at themselves and say, right, we need to block off all those gaps, because like when Hegarty plays well, he's one of those players, he's like, I suppose, Conor Cooney, TJ, Hegarty. When them lads play well, their team usually, comes out on the right side of the matches. So if you can keep him quiet to a certain degree, you go some of the way of getting on top of Limerick. So I think what they did is they got ahead of him on the puck-out strategy in the second half, nullified his possessions. I think in the first half alone he had 12 possessions, which is a lot for one half. Like if you're getting 15 possessions in a whole game, you're influencing the game. So when you have a guy who's picking up the ball on his 21, or the far 21, he's I suppose he's a handful, obviously, but to nullify him was a big part of how Cork got on top of them. And obviously the big thing as well is Declan Hannon. Like, he's just when I look at Declan Hannon, I just think of beautiful simplicity. That's all I think of him, because he does just such the basic stuff excellently well, and he's imperative to Limerick. So when he moved off, things begin to change as well. So getting on top of those two guys is not that simple. Hegarty, they did okay on him, if you like, before he got booed off. so I think all in all, Cork are content. Cork did well. It's not that Ireland, don't get me wrong, it's the first round of the league, but they have to be happy and content with the energy and the fight, the real fight, and the smarts too to get around Limerick in the second half.
Paul, I think we're pretty convinced it was Hegarty getting booed as opposed to Cian Lynch, because Marty Morrissey had his moment kind of lined up on the commentary, because you could see there was a camera on Cian Lynch nearly all of the first half. So at one point he was leaning up against the wall watching the game, and then we saw him warming up and he was about to come on, and Marty was ready for his moment, which is, here's Cian Lynch returning from injury for the first time in months, and next thing there's a boo coming up from Lee's side. But I think the boo was for Hegarty as opposed to for Cian Lynch here.
Yeah, I think just Marty had a bit of tunnel vision. He was obviously distracted by Cian Lynch. Will he or won't he come on? And didn't think that also there's actually a player coming off here, and potentially that's who the Cork fans were booing. Now, it was needless, but it actually just threw my memory back to when we played Tipperary in Nolan Park in 2013. Henry was a late announcement to be on the panel that day, and he was brought on, and Matthew Root was actually taken off in the same instant. But Henry got a standing ovation coming on, which Matty tweeted the following day, basically saying, "Thanks a million for the great reception I received coming off the pitch." And, no, he knew what he was at. But I thought about it when I was watching the game. I was saying, is Marty reading this wrong here? I think it could be Gerard Hegarty is actually who we're booing, but it was needless. It was kind of a needless thing that I was surprised that nothing had really happened or anything. To be booing any of the players coming off, or and it shouldn't be happening anyway. But look, it was a bit of a null point. But Marty, a little bit of tunnel vision there and missed who was actually being booed, I think.
John Kiley didn't seem too disappointed after the game. I actually missed him getting interviewed on the Saturday, because I think the footage ended pretty soon. The coverage ended pretty soon after the game finished, but I did see him being interviewed on League Sunday, and he didn't seem too concerned. Thought they'd hurled pretty well in the first half. And like, if you look at the pattern, you'd be thinking Limerick are getting lots of primary possession here. They're trying plenty of players out with the team that was named to start. Reedy is popping over the frees. There's guys in reserve. You know you're going to get some game time into Lynch. There were double scores up at half time. You're probably thinking this is going pretty well and should be a fairly routine victory in the second half. What went wrong for Limerick in the second half, though, Paul?
What I'd be thinking initially, anyway, is Limerick are probably 4 weeks into training. Again, bringing it back to the point about Cork, like Cork look physically really in a good place at the moment. And when it comes down the final straight, like, I mean, if you think back to Wexford Park last year when Limerick lost to Wexford, really the last 10 minutes came down to maybe just waning towards the end, a few wrong decisions. Cork just got the upper hand and still had that energy to, I suppose, for want of a better way to describe it, bust through the line at the end. They were still kept the tempo really high, but very small margins. Limerick could have came out there with a win. It's absolutely no panic situation now for John Cahill. You go back to last year, and they were losing games on the trot and players were getting sent off, and people were maybe wondering, is the wheels coming off the wagon? Like, they lost by 1 point to a really good Cork performance. Again, they're only back in training 4 weeks. Diarmaid Burns is still away. The likes of Sean Finn, these lads, they enjoyed their winter. They went travelling, so they're at a different stage to where Cork are at. But I've no doubt over the next few weeks, Limerick will get the wins. I don't think they're too concerned. Again, there's a point been made about our teams really concerned with the league. Limerick definitely aren't. Other teams will have different priorities and different agendas in the league, trying to blood new players. But Limerick will take a lot from that game, and they'll learn a lot. They got a good few players in, surrounded then also by the mainstays of the team. Like Sean Finn, Tom Morrissey, Grode Hegarty, they were all there. So they're going in the right direction, and a very small thing in that match would have had a victory for Limerick. So it's small margins here, really.
Yeah, another good game coming from with Clare this coming weekend. Skehill, on Limerick, Garrod Og was in contact on the questions coming in on the Instagram stories this week and Off the Ball. He says, are Limerick ahead of where they were this time last year, and will they be peaking earlier than they did last season? Because we think back to the league last year, draw against Clare, beat Offaly were the only positive results they had in the league, but yet when they came to Munster Championship, by the time they went down to Porky Queeve, they were bang on it. They seemed to have peaked perfectly going into the season, and again they retained their All-Ireland title. Are Limerick looking to peak earlier this year? Where do you expect Limerick to find their peak?
No, for me, like, Limerick have won 3 of the last All-Irelands. Have they 4 and 5 years or something like that? So the league is, with respect, is not overly relevant to them. I think it's about where John Kelly, where they're going as opposed to where they're at. Because by my count, Limerick had, give or take, 9 starters, 9 regulars, if you want to call that, not playing on Saturday, and they still put in a good performance. It's not a top performance by Limerick standards, obviously, but they blooded a lot of people, young lads, like, and bringing in Adam English and Coughlin looked really good, let's say. So it's not as if they're going to be devastated by a single loss at the start of the year. I just think it's all about where they're going to. From a time perspective, I think they know what they're at now at this stage. They've proved it over the last 5 years that they can time it relatively well, and they'll obviously keep going with the same kind of situation where they'll probably have a totally different team next week. Hegarty mightn't play, Lynch might start. They could be bringing back in lads and chopping and changing, and then Kylie will try build a squad, a real top squad, because at the end of the day, iron sharpens iron, and so the more competition he can breed into places, and like, if he is the likes of the Tom Morrisseys or the Darduns or these lads, Will O'Donoghu's looking behind them and seeing, God, there's lads coming from my places, that's when he's going to breed a better environment for Limerick. And I say it again, iron sharpens iron. The more pushing that is done from behind, from number 16 to 30, the better number 1 to 15 to go. I think that's ultimately what John Kelly and his management team are going to try to do. Yes, they want to win every game. Every lad who goes out, plays them games, wants to win the game, without a shadow of a doubt. But I think at the end of the year, if you ask them, do you want a league medal or do you want an Ireland, I think they know which one they pick.
Paul, when it comes to their attack, rumours certainly persist that Aaron Gillane won't be back in until at least the end of the league. So they're going to have to find a system that works without him when he's been so crucial for the last 5 years for him. And like we talked last year when Championship started and Gillane really came to the fore and was so important, that he was still so key to the system. Now, the forwards who are coming back to fitness, that will give them options in the inside forward line. But this year they're probably going to have to do something different. It's not going to be Gillane leading the attack until at least later in the year.
No, it's not. But like James is saying, it's an opportunity now for another forward to step in, and they have plenty of lads, I suppose jumping at the bit to try and get in and grab a jersey. And you'll also have the effect of looking over your shoulder, saying that, okay, even if I do hurl well, Galan coming back, like it's not going to be a simple case that he'll just walk into the team. But some players do have a head start because they have proven ability to perform in big games and what they bring to the field. And we talk about Galan. There was part of the year last year where Galan we were talking about him for hurler of the year. So if those forwards, he can test quite a few forwards here. We've liked Peter Casey as well to come back, which is huge, and he brings his own element to that forward line. Maybe something a little bit different than Aaron Gillan. He's your target man. He's your man that might pop up with a few goals. He's your great free taker, which, like, when we get to Wexford, we'll be talking that they're looking to try and get someone like that. So for John Kiely, it's a good headache to have. I think he would like to have him for the league to actually, blood him. And if he doesn't play till the end of the league, it's an opportunity for someone else to step in, knowing that he's going to come back, so you really have to perform well. So it's not a bad situation for John Kiely to be in, but I'd say he'd rather kind of, I suppose, have the option at the moment to maybe throw him in or out. And like James was saying, like, Rod Hegarty mightn't play next week. We play him this week, might not play him next week, and see how it goes there. So it'll be interesting, but I don't think they have no shortage of lads who are willing to step up there and maybe make a name for themselves. There's one or two spots going potentially in that full forward line.
Yeah, I'll give you this one first, Skehill, because you'll probably get to see Cork in person this coming weekend in Salt Hill. But Brendan O'Mahony in contact as well on the Instagram stories. Cork's chances this year, he asked. There's going to be a chance to put a lot of youngsters in the league. O'Mahony, Downey, Harnedy, Connolly, all still to come back in. They're building a bit of squad depth. What's your feeling about where Cork are at? And I'm always wary as well when we talk about this, Skehill, that this time last year we all felt that Cork were in a pretty good place at this point of the league and even right through to the final.
Yeah, I agree. So we got a couple of things wrong last year. Like, at the end of the league, I thought Waterford were going to be the number 2 team behind Limerick, and so we see how that panned out. But Cork always have a chance. They always do, because they have, like, if you're looking at what ingredients you want in a successful team, like, you have to have players. Like, you have to have the quality there, because you can all train the same. I said this before. You do the same weights, you do the same nutrition, etc. But there is an element of quality that just separates everyone. That's Limerick at the minute. They just have the best players. And so Cork have. Fundamentally, they have an ocean of players, as I said, and when you get a right bit of mix and a bit of momentum, a bit of confidence, that's the big team of Cork. If they get confident and get a bit of momentum going, they're extremely dangerous. There's no problem they could make a run to the Ireland final easily. But it's when they get knocked back, that's where I would always have the question marks, or if there's a system put in front of them whereby, they can't break it down on the day, if there's a team overly physical, if they're not allowed space for the forwards to roam or to move, then the questions get asked to Cork, and not every day they answer them pretty well. They don't answer them pretty well, should I say, every day. So I think the potential is there. That's the key word I use, is potential. It's there. They have all the fundamentals. They have the ingredients in terms of players, and obviously a good manager who has his own experience in the 20s, like, so he knows the players to bring in, if you like, and just getting a bit of momentum going. Like, I know it's the first round of the league, but it was important for Cork to win that game, and important for them to win it in the fashion they did. Because they showed a bit of mettle. I genuinely thought, hands up, I thought that they were going to get beaten by 10 or 15 at half time. I couldn't see a way back for them, and like, it was just chalk and cheese. It was like a different team. So whatever was said at half time, or system adjustments, that's what I was looking for. That's what you look for in championship games. Can they make them system adjustments, and can they up the ante when they're in a bad spot? And they did. So they have every chance.
Well, Paul, you shared those concerns last year very openly about Cork's mentality when the going got tough ultimately throughout various different stages of the year. Did you see anything in last weekend, and particularly in the second half, that might make you think, all right, maybe they're going to be a bit of a trickier proposition if they do end up in these adverse moments during the season?
Yeah, and it was literally just the aggression in the second half. There was no fear in terms of going up against Limerick, and there was a little bit of bullying involved. Like, they were, there was one stage Cian Lynch was tackled, there was 2 lads around him, they turned over the ball, they were getting in lads' faces. Like, you can't bluff that. That's either there or it's not there. And sometimes the manner in which Cork have won over the last few years, for me, would have been, okay, we're jumping the gun here. Like, they won, yeah, they may have won by 6 or 7 points in certain games, but you had to look at the opposition to say, did the opposition actually really put them under savage pressure, or did they facilitate a Cork team who likes to run at you? They like to run in waves up the pitch. And when Cork do that, it looks very impressive. But it's when Cork don't have the ball at times over the last few years, you'd question, were they willing to go and get stuck in? And, going back to saying in Welsh Park last year, that was a game I was down at, and you know, we were fancying that basically this was, you know, a formality. Waterford were going to go in, win very comfortably and leave, and their year was going to continue on, and Cork were going to finish up. And Cork showed something that we hadn't seen from them. They just completely got stuck in. It was a different type of performance. But it, again, goes back to, will they do it week on week? Now, I did really think in the second half, what I saw was, well, they could do that, because it's an attitude thing. If you're willing to get aggressive with the likes of Limerick, and you're able to do it, and you show potential that you can get physical, well, you can do that week on week. And I think if this Cork team does do that, when you name the players that they do have to come back, that's ideal. Like, I mean, it's no good having all these players if they're all lovely players who just want to kind of, you know, tap the ball around and get nice scores. But if you have a panel of players there who are vicious enough in terms of getting stuck into games, if you're going on the road visiting Clare or playing Tipperary, and you know you're bringing that with you, that's a dangerous thing to have for a team. And a lot of teams won't fancy it. So yeah, I think I did, and I've been critical of Cork over the few years. I think we all have, really, at times, but I did see in the second half that actually they do have something here, and it'll just be interesting to see over the next while whether will they show up and not bring it with them on days, because that's something that I wouldn't even mind the Cork team if they didn't hurl too well on the days, but their aggression was there and they were getting stuck in, but just things didn't work out for them. Fine, because if you have that characteristic in a team, you'll do a lot and you'll go far with it. So yeah, hopefully so, because if Cork go really well, you know, they make for an interesting Munster Championship. They make for an interesting team going into the All-Ireland series as well. So hopefully they continue that form and bring it ahead for the rest of the league.
Yeah, the other game in Division 1A that was on the TV on Saturday doubled up as the Walsh Cup final, and we Conor Whelan walk away with the Walsh Cup afterwards, and Galway picked up 2 league points to start off the campaign too. This one, though, was probably, I think, lost by Wexford in the first half and won by the really good scoring spell Skehill in the second half from Galway, because Wexford 11-10 up early stages of the second half. Then Galway get 10 points in a row after that. But in many ways, for Wexford left the scores behind them was in that starting kind of 15-20 minutes of the game. They had 12 more shots than Galway, but only 39% of them were going between the posts. So with the wind, Wexford used the wind very poorly, while Galway made much better use of it in the second half.
Yeah, so look, Wexford, in the first couple of minutes, like, it was kind of all Wexford. I think Galway were trying to find their feet with, again, new clientele on the pitch, and Wexford had a furore shots, but their execution is like, it's an old issue, isn't it? We've seen with them in league and in championship over the past couple of years. And when stats came out at half time, there was 15 shots that they had missed in the half, and that was the tail of the game, because when you go to the end of the game, I think Galway only had 2 more shots than Wexford, but the efficiency rate was far higher from Galway, obviously. And just Wexford, but even it's not even the shooting, you can say, is global, it's overall, right? But the choice of shot, some of the shots they were taking was just ludicrous. And I understand when you're down in Wexford Park in these places, you have a breeze behind you, so you could be tempted to take some long range shots. But there were shots like on the sideline at the 21 that should never be taken on. They should be recycled, and there should be oncoming runners. And then there's just some shots in there were just the most basic, simplistic. You think point, guaranteed point, and just it's tail wide. And from people like who normally would put them away. So it's not as if Galway blew Wexford out of it. They just didn't. They were far more clinical with the ball, far more efficient. And I think they had a better squad on the day and finished strong. Galway looked fit, look really strong. But I think for Wexford going forward, you can point to shooting. That's easy points to shooting. But like overall, their game plan, their tackling was really poor. Like their tackling, I couldn't get over the tackling, because that's how they were keeping Galway in the game in the first half, by giving away frees, you know. And it wasn't even, you know, questionable frees. The frees were like just pure rugby style. You know, 2 hands in, grabbing lads, blatant free all day long. And it just kept the scoreboard for Galway ticking over, even though Wexford had their purple patch for most of the half. So I just think if you're going away from that game with Wexford, yes, you can work on shooting drills, no problem. But overall, the tackling ratio and the way they tackled and the amount of frees they gave away is a bigger issue for Derry Egan.
Yeah, the frees are a big issue as well, Paul. You already alluded to it earlier. And Lee Chin was injured, so he missed the game on Saturday evening. I think he might well be back for next week, or he's coming very close to returning. It's just a knock that he's picked up. He made a good impression off the bench, and we played against Offaly in the Walsh Cup a few weeks ago, but they're easing him back into the season and not taking any risks. Maybe he is the free-taking option, but again, Shin has had a few shaky days on the frees over the last couple of years as well. It looks like they need to get a settled free taker, because otherwise teams are going to know they can foul Wexford, and the conversion rate from the frees aren't going to be good enough.
Yeah, they need to just find this person that's fairly just robotic with the frees, and you know they're going to put them over. Like looking at Kilkenny and Antrim over the weekend, like Conal Cunning for Antrim, it was nearly surprised at half time. Kilkenny did all the hurling, but Antrim were still within touching distance of them. There was still a goal in it, and that was true consistent frees, popping them over. You know, just any little opportunity, they were taking it. When you look at Wexford, like it could be just the downfall of their year that because it's very deflating for a team when you're hitting wides. You might be working hard, you might turn over a ball and then a silly wide because, like James is saying there, someone takes a shot from a stupid position or a shot that, yeah, it's in a good position, should be scoring wide, or then freeze. Like, you know, we saw a few examples of freeze there where lads we would have never seen stand over a ball, take free, were taking them and dropping short, things like that, just criminal stuff, you know. And really, it's just for Wexford, really. It's hard to build up any sort of head of steam when you're hitting wides like that, and then Galway hitting them for 10 points on the trot, like that's criminal. We talked about it last year, and we always talk about it with Limerick that they don't allow you to try and score 3 scores. Like they break that cycle, so they don't let you. Your purple patch at best will be, you know, you might get 3 points or you might get a goal or something, but you know, for Wexford to not even steady the ship and just stem the tide of Galway running at them, and just pop the ball over the bar. You know, things like that, just game management there. Like it is wides, but it also steps into the game management side where you just, okay, lads, we need to reset here. 1 score steadies the ship a small bit. So it is a concern for them, and they need someone. Like, you don't even look at other counties, the likes of, you know, Kilkenny or Cork or Limerick. You don't even think about it. They have their free taker, and it's just a formality in many cases. Wexford needs to find that because they're losing a lot of, not to say simple scores, but a lot of nailed on scores for other teams. So yeah, it's something they really need to work on. I think Chin will be on him when he comes back. But look, I mean, even if Chin tightens up a small bit on it as well, like he is a good free taker, but just maybe not in the category of the likes of Patrick Horgan or these.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about as well, Scal, when it comes to this game is that if it happened, in fact, the penalty gets missed. Mark Fanning made a couple of decent saves. Galway hit the crossbar with one of the flick shots as well. On a different day, Galway could well have had 3-23 as opposed to 23 points here.
You're dead right. And I just have to pick up on what Murph said there about the 10 points in the trot. That's a concern too, because like it's not as if Wexford had a young team out. They had Fanning, that Ryan, that Reck, Foley, Keefe, you know, that McDonald, that big important players. So from a game management perspective, them lads should have just stopped the rot. They should just, if they had to, bring back the 15 lads behind the 45 just for 5 minutes, just to, as Murph said, stem it, just stop it. And like that's concerning, you know. And you're right in the opportunities that arose. If you like, Gerald Mannion had one, he could have. He dropped it. Jason Flynn had one that could have been 2 goals. Liam Collins, as he said, on the crossbar penalty. You know, so like I can go away from a work-on's perspective. They'll be disappointed not to score a goal because they created a load of opportunities. And Wexford got one opportunity off memory. You know, and it's like it's just I always think back, to be honest, Will. I think back to the semi-final when Tip, I think it was 2019. Tip played Wexford, and was it one of the Tip lads got sent off? Was it McGrath? John McGrath got sent off?
Again, John McGrath got sent off.
Semi-final. John McGrath, semi-final. John McGrath was sent off, and it was just like, so obviously Wexford had a numerical advantage, but they just kept pumping the ball down Route 1, which was Ronan Maher's day all day. You know what I mean? And that's a game management situation. And like, I know it's the league. Don't get me wrong. Hands up, it's the league. But like, when you're allowing a team, like, it's criminal to allow 10 points in a row. Criminal. And like, it's same with, I was saying at halftime in the Limerick game, criminal to allow 5 points in a row from minute 30 to 37. You know, you can't have that happen. And that comes down. That's not a manager. That's not the crowd. You know, that's you guys on the pitch saying to yourselves, right, pull everyone back for 5 minutes and stop the rot. So that'd be disappointing. You know what I mean? Disappointing from my perspective. But like you said, this could have been a 20-point victory for Galway, but just on the day, execution wasn't there.
Yeah, I'm not sure as well, Murph, whether the issue about the poor shooting comes down to Wexford not having the forwards to put the ball into, or whether it's a case of just bad decision making further out the field. Because Gerald McInerney ends up keeping Conor MacDonald scoreless from play, and MacDonald was frustrated any time that he got in around goal if he caught the ball, because there were so many Galway defenders around to just kind of swamp him up. And you know, last year we talked about the fact that Rory O'Connor was having a great year, and they're probably going to be dependent on him again going into this season and trying to get ball into Conor MacDonald. But maybe the issue is partially down to the fact that they don't have the targets in there to actually send the ball into.
Yeah, they probably don't. And the likes of, you need to come up with a different game plan. If you're going to be trying lumping balls down on which potentially be Dahi Burke or McInerney, like you just don't do that. And I think that was a lot of it. What Wexford's plan kind of was, whether they veered from it, whether they had a plan, but they didn't seem to have as much of a coherent plan. Like even you look at Dublin at the weekend, they knew how they wanted to target their full forward line. And once they got traction, you could see what they were trying to do. And it's like, yeah, that's very good. But Conor McDonald's a great ball winner in the air. It's just that one day you might have a really good day plucking balls out of the sky, but you won't often string together a few good days of just lumping balls down, catching balls. So I wouldn't be relying on that too much. So I think for Wexford, like they traditionally would have good structures over the last 10 years or so and know how they want to play, sit deep and then go forward in waves. But just look, again, like James saying, it's one game, but there was hints to say, do we know what we're doing here? And going back to the game management point, like 10 points on the trot for me would say that you completely just lost your shape. Like Darren Morrissey ran forward and scored a point at one stage. Like Galway had no similar problems in terms of finding scores. They had lads running forward, comfortable going forward, knew what they were about. So just at the moment with Wexford, it's early days, and nobody's panicking yet. But that is something like every team is going to be taking something from each game, small things here and there that you're building on. But there's a few big ones there for Wexford to take, like those wides, and it was every kind of a wide. It was silly decisions, ones you should be getting and they weren't getting. A little bit of confidence there, I think, creeping in where lads were kind of, snapping at shots and different things. But there's a few big ticket items that Wexford can take from that match the weekend, which you'd be saying, look, if we don't address these now, we're just going to have a poor year because you're not going to get away against any of the top teams playing like this. And the scoreline says it all. And like we said, it could have been a lot worse for them. But look, we'll temper that with saying it's early days. And Darragh Egan has shown great styles in play, and when he gets the Wexford team going, but they do need to find someone inside in that full forward line. And the likes of Oisin Pepper and that, he's a dangerous player. And I think when they find like the likes of role for him and Rory O'Connor when they come back, I do think that they will up their game, but they need to introduce one or two more players that would really cause problems for teams in that forward line.
Yeah. James, when it comes to Galway, it's going to be probably a stiffer test against Cork this coming weekend, but I would think there'd be some elements to be very happy with. It looks like Conor Whelan's carrying his form from last season into the start of this year. St Thomas players weren't around, so they're going to be coming back into the team to strengthen it as well. And at various times, I mean, you had Galway defenders going on jaunts up the pitch and scoring points during the game too. Like, I think if you were a Galway supporter, you're probably happy enough with the performance, particularly the second half of the weekend.
Yeah, I thought myself now that they'd win the game at the weekend. Obviously, prior, I thought they'd win it by 2 or 3. I didn't expect this margin of victory. And the system they're playing, let's say, where you find Darren Morrissey, as Murph said, going forward, like who might I say was absolutely outstanding. When you've got players with that ability. So if you remember the semi-final last year, Darren Morrissey coming out from cornerback, he's well able to take them on. So utilise his strengths. So then you've got Gareth Mackey in a fullback, picked from McDonald. He loves the high ball coming down all day long. You know what I mean? So whereas Wexford were centering their game plan nearly around one player, Galway had an array of, I suppose, angles they could use. They were coming from the back. They could shoot from distance. They could get inside. Look at Brian Concannon. What he did, he in the full forward in the second half, like he was like that big soccer number 9. He was just able to retain the ball, which is a key thing. So when you have players of quality that can just ball attention at the full forward line, you'd always say, right, we need to get 30, 40, 50 balls into the full forward line. I would always say, what percentage of them balls are actually retained? How good is your team at keeping the ball in the full forward line, executing on a score? Because you look at Gallan, his retention rate is sky high. It's huge. You put TJ in the full forward line, his retention rate is huge. And in the first half, let's say, probably our retention rate was a bit low. So by bringing in Brian, utilising him, I think just Galway are just going to be really satisfied with the performance. They blooded a couple of young lads that personally even I didn't think they'd bring on, and they just seem to be looking physically in really good shape and in a good spot. And with guys to come back, as you said, like they've got Finton and Connor and Dave Burke, and they've lads who can add more cotton money, etc. So like they're building a good squad. They have a good squad. I won't say they're building it. They have a good squad. They have a good 25, 30 guys that you could trust in a championship game, in my opinion. And I just think mold them together, getting the right game plan, a bit of momentum, just like we mentioned about Cork later on. And I think, they can go places. I think, in my opinion, I know it's early, I'm looking at them to be the biggest challenge in Limerick.
The other game in Group 1A was played yesterday afternoon. Perhaps no great surprise that Clare came out reasonably comfortable winners against Westmeath in the end. 4-27 to 14 points, the final score. Westmeath will probably rue a goal chance that was missed by Niall O'Brien when the game was at 9 points to 5, coming up to nearly half an hour played. And then Mark Rogers pops in a couple of goals before half-time, puts Clare in a very comfortable position, 2-10 to 7. And then Clare kind of just kicked on a bit in the second half. They were 2-19 to 9 points up when Ian Galvin puts in the third goal, and then Shanahan gets the fourth goal to just sweep to a pretty comfortable victory for them in the end. They play Limerick this weekend coming, and how important, Paul, is it for Clare now, given that they were very, very close to Limerick last year, showed they could go toe-to-toe with them, to try and get one over their rivals this weekend?
I don't think the actual winning of the game is hugely important for Clare. Like, I don't believe it's a mental block for them or anything, wondering about this Limerick team and could they beat them. Come to the Munster Championship phase, that's where they'll want to do it. I think a performance here, and I don't mean that in that they just want to put in a performance and go home and whatever. It's more for Brian Lohan at the moment. He's after reintroducing a few players that weren't there last year, like Aidan McCarthy and these lads. And, it's great to do that because they had obviously a great last year, all except for the semi-final. But a performance against Limerick. And again, like you said, learning a bit more. They did put up a big score on Westmeath, but we saw last year, Westmeath can be very tough when you take them for granted. And Clare didn't take them for granted. That's even missing a few players. They performed really well. They put up the score that was probably expected for a man and a few more. And they were able to get their goals as well. So I think Clare will be looking to this weekend to go, okay, we've reintroduced a few more players. We have a bit of competition, a small bit more of a depth into the panel, which is important. If you want to go the full way in Munster or even further again in the All-Ireland series, you need that depth in the panel. So I think Brian Lohan will be happy that he has players coming back, and that he'll be looking forward to the challenge going down to Limerick. But I don't think the result really, the result won't matter a whole lot. It's more the performance and what they can take away from that day. Because if they want to beat Limerick, it's Munster Championship is when they want to beat them. So I wouldn't be too concerned this weekend if they go and Limerick beat them by 5 or 6 points, or they might get a win. But either way, they're going to have to park it after that. It's just the learning outcomes from it will be the main thing for Brian Lohan.
Yeah, that's the 7 p.m. throw-in on Saturday. It's on RT2 at the Gaelic Grounds, Limerick against Clare. Just a few moments ago, Skehill, you think that Galway are the closest to Limerick and possibly their closest contenders when it comes to the major silverware later this year. How far are Clare away from winning the All-Ireland Championship then?
Yeah, like the margin, I think if you were to pick, I can pick 5 or 6 teams, and I can separate them by 1%. That's how tight the margins are. So you can, Murph's opinion could be way different to mine because the margins are so small. It's not that obvious, you know what I mean? So I think Clare, again, Clare have been building. I would have said last year that I was looking forward to looking at them because I was impressed with Brian Lohan's first year. I thought he was doing a lot of good stuff and that you'd expect him to move on, And I did not expect that blowout, if you like, in the semi-final last year against Kilkenny. So I'm interested to see how they bounce back from that. Did they introduce a couple of new players, some key positions, especially in the forwards? And how they treat the league, I don't think they're too. I won't use the word interested, but I think they're more about finding themselves in the league, if you like, to make a run of championship. It's all about the championship. So I think they're going to Limerick. They'll be always competitive. Clare always competitive because there'll be a big crowd there. And will they win the game? Don't know. Probably unlikely, to be honest. But it's all about finding who have I got. That's what Brian Lohan said. Who have I got to make a push come May, June, etc. Because the way they went out of the championship last year was probably the most hurtful thing of all, considering that they had built up a big head of steam against Limerick in the Munster Championship. So to answer your question in a roundabout way, I think they're probably 4th, to be honest. 4th, give or take. Yeah, I think if we're way too early doing a flipping power rankings now, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to say it anyways.
You've already you bridged onto it. How did you manage?
Yeah, you put me in the spot there. Now seamless. Now we've picked 3, 4, 5. So Limerick are number 1, obviously. Galway are 2. I think hand on heart, I think Kilkenny are 3. I think Clare are 4. You know what I mean? And I don't know where I am with Tip. I don't know where I am with Waterford or Dublin. Do you know what I mean? Or Cork just yet. So that's kind of where I'll stop.
Hold your fire on Tip for a second. We can talk about some of their kind of new additions and changes under Liam Cahill in a moment. But I may as well throw that back over to you, Murph. He reckons Kilkenny are now 3rd best, Galway 2nd best. How are you shaping up your top 4 or 5 there, then?
Well, I'm just thinking he must play a savage value on the Welsh Cup that Galway are now after leapfrogging Kilkenny after getting to the All-Ireland final last year and losing by 2 points to Limerick. But no, like I think Kilkenny are in second. And just basing it off, we haven't learned any more this year to really, like where we left it with the power rankings last year. We haven't learned anything after one weekend to say why that should change a whole lot. But I do agree with James, like, as in, you can kind of pick your top 4 or 5 there. But after that, there's a lot of question marks then. You know, obviously Tipperary, Waterford, Dublin, the likes of Dublin, you know, what shape will be on them. They look good after the weekend. You'd wonder with Waterford, did they do a post-mortem on what happened last year? Indications would be maybe they didn't because, you know, I did see an interview with Austin Gleeson who kind of says that change of management allowed us to move on. So I would say there's a question mark there. They definitely have the players, they have the panel. But maybe, you know, what happened last year, a little bit of a collapse. So, and then like Tipperary then as well. You know, it's interesting what's happening in Tipperary as well. So I think outside of the top 5 there, it's hard to know. But I'd have Kilkenny in second. I don't think the Welsh Cup victory can knock them out a second for the moment, Skehill.
I respectfully disagree. I thought I was being nice, putting them in third.
We're going to put them in first, are you?
Well, sure. Okay, the last Ireland final by 2 points, Limerick. Galway got beaten by a point by Limerick. So look, nothing separates them. You know. But I think, look, if we could turn around now and push, you know, Clare second, and there could be a good argument for it. Do you know what I mean? It's just that the margin is so tight.
Yeah.
So let's just hold fire on that one for the minute.
Paul, on the Waterford point, I think this is quite interesting because I was speaking to Dan Shanahan a few months ago and he said genuinely it was very difficult to put a finger on what went wrong between the league of last year. Stephen Bennett talked about it just ahead of the start of the National League a couple of weeks ago, and he said that you can't say that Waterford were tired or they had put too much into the league because he was saying there wasn't evidence of that. But again, a bit like Ozzie Gleeson's comments just before Christmas, where he said, do you know what, we're just parking it and moving on. Is there not a case, and maybe this is just a public front that's coming out of Waterford here, that if you do have such disappointing performances, particularly I would say since, you know, the defeat to Limerick in the Championship, and then it really fell off a cliff for them. If you want to go forward as a group though, surely, and if this was you guys with Kilkenny, would you have sat down and actually had a proper look at, right, here's why it went wrong?
Yeah, you'd have to. There'd be some instances where you could make a very, like, let's say you went out and you hit a load of wides and you went, okay, our decision making there wasn't good. Obviously, we lost the match because of it. But like Dan Shanahan was saying, it's very hard to put your finger on what happened with Waterford. And in that situation, you have to address it. You have to speak about it and say, what is it? Because for me, it just lies dormant in the back of your head then. And right, you might get a head of steam up then in the league or the Munster Championship and things are going well. And then you suddenly have a few weeks off to a big game. And then does it creep back in? Does the voice creep back in where there's a bit of doubt? Because you don't know what it was. You didn't address it. And suddenly you get destroyed by Limerick in the Munster final. Or, you know, after doing such great work. And like the example I would have thought of was in 2012. And, you know, when Galway bet us in the Leinster final, it completely blew us out of the water. The following evening, we went in and, you know, Brian said, we're going to watch the first 20 minutes because Galway were exceptional in the first 20 minutes. And really the game was won and lost there. But he said, we're going to watch the first 20 minutes. We watched it and it was terrible watching. You know, it was really painful stuff. But then decided just not to turn it off. We'll just watch the full 70 minutes. And there wasn't a word spoken. And it was horrible. Like, a part of me still feels like I'm sitting there watching it now. It was just terrible. But it allowed us to go back then, let's say, the Tuesday night and train. And there was a kind of a thing where you were a little bit ashamed of your performance because it was, you know, you didn't front up to Galway. They bullied us. But likewise, we didn't just click our fingers and it disappeared. You know, we went out, we played Limerick in the quarter-final and we kind of failed to impress for the first half an hour, but then got to grips with it and bet Limerick and then managed to put in a really good performance against Tipperary in the semi-final. But because we addressed it, because we actually looked at it and we went, that's not what we're about. You know, we don't do that. Going forward, at least, you know, you die on your sword here. And at least if we meet Galway again, put it up to them and don't become this team that gets bullied. Waterford would surely now, you know, be looking at this going, like, our year was in our hands to an extent. Cork were visiting us, and the wheels came off the wagon down in Welsh Park, which would be another sting in the tail for Waterford, in that Cork, a team who we would have been critical of, went and put it up to them, came out with a win, and then suddenly uncertainty crept into the Waterford camp. So I wonder, did they address it? Maybe they did. Maybe what Austin Gleeson said was a bit of a throwaway comment that he just said, we moved on. But I don't know if they did, No. And it'd be something I'd certainly be thinking that Davy Fitz either should or not, saying his business, should maybe address. Because like I said at the start, if you go into the season, you could very well, Waterford could go really well in this league. They could go into a round robin phase then in Munster and go really well. And it could just happen again. And it's a waste of a year if it happens again, for the sake of talking about it and saying, what was that, lads? What happened? Okay, we have our answers. Now let's move on.
It's interesting management by Brian Cody, by the way, because I've been in at inter-county panels before and seen the way that things are presented when it comes to a rewatch of a match from the weekend. And generally, the stats team have already put graphics in place and they'll stop the video in different sections and so on. By the sounds of it, that was almost like, you should be disappointed about this performance and I'm going to make you sit down and endure it. And the DVD was just clicked on and you had to watch the full 70.
And that was it, yeah. And you just hear tuts every so often. You could just see Davy Burke coming running through and nobody coming tackling him, or a Kilkenny lad being isolated and suddenly get tackled. You're looking at it going, and you look across and you're 15 yards away, not running in to take a pass off him. All these things, and it was small little things all over the pitch. And sometimes, let's say, for example, people will talk about, Waterford, what happened last year. Sit down and have a look at the matches and then look at the small little margins where maybe they weren't competing, where they were competing viciously at the start of the year. But then maybe they thought, we have this figured out, or whatever it was. I don't know what it is. But if they don't just sit down and have a look at the matches, and it's painful to do it, but there's a healing process in it where you go, oh yeah, I can see that. That's not what I'm about. And if I am about that, maybe I shouldn't be playing. So these are things that they maybe have to look at and go, okay, it mightn't be pretty to go back and look at going down playing Clare and getting absolutely hammered, but maybe it's necessary. So yeah, a sports psychologist didn't come in with us that Monday evening. There was very little talking done. I would say Brian spoke before he put it on and he played it, but it was, as far as I'm concerned, the winning and losing of 2012 for us, because we were able to move on.
Not to cut across you, but I bet you just by watching that, it brought complete clarity to the situation, didn't it?
Oh, complete clarity.
The thing about Waterford is, whether it's business or sport, whatever, if there's an issue and the team or the workforce or whatever is not performing, it needs to be addressed, analysed, and a plan put in place to fix it. Because when you move forward from that, then it brings complete clarity. We know what the issue is now. Let's work towards it. So I'd be astounded if they didn't address it either last year or if Davy Fitz didn't address it coming in, because there is full potential for it to happen again if it's not addressed, And so, Murph, back to your situation, he went in, probably not a word spoken, watched it, you could see what went on. And as he came out of the dressing room or came out of the meeting room, there was clarity on what you needed to do. Yeah. And signs on, you finished the year in Ireland,
That's it. And if Anthony rejuvenates you, because you just go, it gives you something to work towards, because you're like, I never want to put that performance in again. So now you're getting really aggressive with it. You're like, that's not what we're about. And when you're able to say that, that's huge. When you were able to identify something like that, like Wexford, we're talking about Wexford there, scratching their heads about this and that. Like you said there, James, clarity. When you have answers to those questions, well, now you can work towards it, and now you can go into training and put in ferocious sessions because you know what you're trying to do. You're not aimlessly wandering, trying to figure out. Because Waterford, the thing is, they have such really good players, like excellent players. And we saw them luring lads off the bench at the weekend, Desi Hutchinson, Austin Gleeson, that, they could play so well purely through their skill and through having a strong panel, that all may appear apparent that everything's fine again. Truly because they just have such a good panel, but really under the surface they mightn't. That's what might catch them out if it wasn't addressed, is that their skill will make it look like, oh yeah, we're back, everything's fine, we've forgotten about it, but maybe they haven't. So look, that'll be interesting to see.
Do you reckon, James, that Davy Fitz would have come in and actually addressed that, or does he need to address it if they actually had those conversations since Liam has left? How does Davy Fitzgerald actually approach that coming in?
Well, if I'm in a position of management, like I said a minute ago, yes, if it's a work, if it's wherever it is where you've got a group of individuals who are striving towards a goal, right, and if they fell off a cliff as badly as they did last year, you need to identify it, discuss it, and try to fix it. So for him, the first thing I'd be doing is going in and saying, right, pull in, not necessarily everybody, but pull in 7 or 8 of your senior members, the guys who have been there a while, and 1 or 2 different guys, and try to get a mix and feel of what went wrong, and then try to put plans and processes in to fix it. So I think that would be one of the first things he did. Now, he mightn't admit that, nor with the Waterford players, But I think it's fundamental to them for going forward that you have to address the elephant in the room. Because if he doesn't and puts it under the rug, you know, a win here, a win there, like Paul said with Skehill, it just papers over the cracks. But ultimately, when the heat championship comes, those cracks will pop out again. You know, so if I think for him, I'd say even when he was in the mix for getting the job, I think he was putting a plan in place on how to address this. You know, how initially to get in contact with the players. Whether this could be a phone call to each individual, he could just ring them and get a feel for themselves. Maybe not necessarily bring them all in as a group, but I think that's definitely one of the first things he did. And if he didn't do it, I'd be very surprised, because he being part of a team of his in the past, you know, he is, despite his certain issues, you could say, he is extremely organised. You know, he always has the T's crossed and the I's dotted. So I'd be, as I said, I'd be amazed if he didn't dress it early.
Paul, when it comes to Waterford, will Fitzgerald have been disappointed to both lose Pádraig Mahony in the end to his retirement and for Stephen O'Keefe to decide not to come in? Because we've been talking so many times about how well O'Keefe has been playing, and again, outstanding for Ballygunner in the year just gone by, but he's decided he's given his time and to Ballygunner rather than this. I think he would have loved to have had both Pádraig and Socky involved with Waterford this year.
Yeah, I think he would. And like, you know, what manager wouldn't, even from an experience point of view, but like Stephen O'Keefe is, you know, one of the best, if not the best of his generation. I saw Murphy, you know, tweeting about it there after Ballyhale Ballygunner match. Like, he's an exceptional goalkeeper, and you know, has decided that he's going to, you know, do his own thing, and that he's put a pin in the whole Wexford or the Waterford thing. So, of course, he'd love to have him. And even from a competition point of view, like, you'd imagine he'd be number one goalkeeper, but having a few goalkeepers there in the go, it's great for competition. Pádraig Mahony, of course, like a fella who's been in so many situations down through the years for Waterford, so many big games, great player, great free taker. You know, it'd be, again, another great thing for Davy to have going in. If this was Davy's second or third year, I think he just, you know, accepts that these lads are moving on. But I think for his first year to have all options available, of course he would have wanted them. But look, I mean, he has an extremely strong panel there. You know, he won't be stuck for people to fill the gaps with these lads. But I think from an experience point of view and just having those steady hands in the dressing room as well, of course he'd love to have the option of those two lads with him. Yeah,
James, when it comes to Waterford's first game, entertaining fair at Fraher Field yesterday, because in the end they shared the points, Dublin and Waterford. Both teams can maybe feel slightly grieved that they didn't pick them all up, because Waterford had got themselves into such a strong position, 1-5 to no score up inside 16 minutes. You're wondering what's going on with Dublin at all, that they haven't even threatened for scores really in that first quarter of the game. Then by half time, the game is back level, 2-7 to 1-10. Two very good goals by Keane O'Sullivan, some excellent penalty taking throughout the game on both sides. Waterford end up going down to 13 men because Bennett gets sent off for the slap and Fagan gets sent off for the drag down for the penalty. And in the end, it's Waterford having to empty the bench a little bit and bring on some of the key players like Leeson and Hutchinson, and maybe they'll feel like, despite the good positions they were in at different times during the game, that they actually rescued a draw against Dublin. So a lot to probably pick out with this game, James.
Yeah, I think Micheál and his management team would be quite happy from a Dublin perspective, because, like, I think if you rewind back even last year, a couple of years ago, if that game, take the Dublin team last year, if that took off to a 1-5 or 1-6 no score, you would fear for Dublin the potential they could get hammered, you know. And so for them to fight back in the manner that they did is extremely impressive. Now, I will say, for like Micheál's, he's very much based on he's kind of a never give up kind of style, you know what I mean? So I'd say he's drilled into the Dublin lads that you fight to the bitter end regardless of what the score is. And I think that was evident. I think it was the 77th minute Donald Burke got the last free, is it?
Yeah,
and like they outscored from play. They outscored Waterford to 11 to 9 points, which again is good to be proud of as well. So it's not as if they depended on Donald Burke for frees, which they have done in the past, to be honest. So I think looking at that game, and like Waterford is a tough place. It is a hard place to go. Like I think I'd say I've played down to Waterford 10 times, probably won only once or twice. You know what I mean? So it's a really difficult place to go. The crowd are always rapturous. Conditions are always a bit tricky, and the pitch is tight. You know, so it's kind of suited to Waterford to get victories there. So Dublin will be proud, first of all, of their effort. They came away at 1 point. It's better than none, obviously. And I think he's something to build on now. He's unearthed a few people. And like the Keane O'Sullivan goals, geez, they were class. The first goal was extremely impressive. I know that everyone looks at the second goal, they go, it was a great finish, but the first goal, like when he gives the hand pass and receives the hand pass and the touch, like that was very, very sharp, and to finish it with a cool head. So I think he's trying to build a squad. He's obviously lost a couple of guys, a couple of big players from last year. Chris Crumley being the most noticeable one, and he's got guys to come back. So you know, it's one step in a long journey for them, lads, I think. But I think they'll be happy that they went down to Waterford and came away with something.
Yeah, that's the thing for Dublin, Paul. I mean, it is the learning process for them, both in the pre-season competition now into the league. They are going to have to probably unearth some players, but there was a beauty to some of their directness when they put ball in behind the Waterford defence and got some, good scores out of it. And Skehill just mentioned about the goals there, which were incredibly well taken. There was that feeling that maybe Dublin are going to be able to share the scores around a little bit better than last season.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what I was most impressed with Dublin was they knew what they were about and they had a game plan. They knew how they wanted to target their full forward line. Like real basic things, but brilliant when you're a part of a team and everybody around the pitch knows how we're trying to target our full forward line. You have a full forward line there that had a bit of devilment in them as well. Like they were going for goal. They, Prunty's mistake, let's say, for the first goal, Cian O'Sullivan gets it and suddenly there was only one thing. They saw a 2-on-2. We're going to go at it here and we're going to try and go for goal. Didn't panic and, kept going till the opportunity arose where we're going to have a shot here now. His second goal is excellent as well. So, I really liked what Dublin were about. And like that again, they don't have huge marquee names all over the pitch. They know what they have. But it seems that Micheál Donoghue's put a nice bit of shape onto them. And again, it's one game, but there was a lot of things you were looking at Dublin here going, okay, they have ball winners here. There seems to be a bit of aggression back in their game as well. They were 1-5 down after 10 minutes and, down to 14 men. And you're kind of thinking, oh, this isn't great. And they didn't panic. They just came into the game, started getting their scores, getting their goals. And yeah, like James was saying, not easy to go to Walshford and Fraher Field. I've played in that myself as well. It's a tight pitch. And to come away with a point, they'll certainly be happy with that anyway, because it's a step in the right direction for them. But I think Dublin early indications with against Waterford was that, going forward in the league, they'll cause lads problems. And I think they are going in the right direction. I think there is indications there. But I'll be interested watching them over the next while to see, can they build on this and can they maybe unearth a few more players to kind of, I suppose, worry a few teams for the latter end of the league and into the championship.
Yeah, and so it comes out of these games. Sorry, go on, Skehill.
No, I was just going to ask Murph, what's in your opinion, what's the successful season for Dublin look like?
It's a tough one now. A successful one for Dublin would be, I don't know. Kilkenny and Galway are in a different place to them, but if Wexford continue to have the few problems, Dublin coming third in the round robin phase in Leinster, where before the weekend we were kind of saying, okay, Wexford are in a much stronger position here now than Dublin. But again, look, it's one round, it's one game. We're not getting ahead of ourselves. But I think if Dublin target the likes of playing Wexford and get a victory, that'll be big now for Dublin. I think a successful year would be coming third. I don't see them coming in the top two, but yeah, I think something around that and getting into the qualifiers then for the All Ireland that'll be a very successful year, and to build on that for Micheál Donoghu would be big. I don't think we're expecting Dublin to be setting the world alight. That's not to be insulting them, but I think they know what they have, and a successful year for them would be taking a few scalps off teams, maybe winning a game or two that they weren't expected to win. And I think that's kind of where they're at the moment.
Yeah. Just before we come on air, I had a quick listen to a rival podcast with Dalo's podcast on the Irish Examiner, because I was intrigued to see what his reaction was going to be after what's become a back and forth in a way now, because he had his column, which went up on Friday night, I think, about the league medal being worth about the same as a spare €2 coin that you find at the moment. And the point wasn't, I think, to necessarily devalue the league. It was just because of the way that the championship structure comes in so soon after the league. It's all about winning your provincial and about winning your All-Ireland, and less so about league titles. And last year, maybe we got a few false impressions because of the league as well. You threw this in the group last night, Murph. These were the comments which were made by Davy Fitzgerald afterwards. And I'm going to quote him here. He said, "I think you can see with myself and Micheál today, and we both won All Ireland as managers. I don't think we're treating it that lightly outside there. I don't think any of the managers I saw over the weekend, be it John Kiley last night or Pat Ryan, were treating it lightly. We're trying hard. Are we going to expose more players than we would in the championship? Yeah, but the games are competitive. I'm yet to see teams going out saying, we'll just try out 20 players. We wanted to win that. They wanted to win that. Limerick and Cork. Limerick mightn't have had their full squad out, but they were absolutely bursting to try and win that game last night, the same as Cork were. So that's fine. I suppose people have to write something. I'm not saying the be-all and end-all. There was one stupid comment I heard that's the same as a €2 coin. You win a National League. I didn't win one. I'd love to have won one. It's not the same as an All-Ireland. It's not the same as a Munster. Probably coming after that, it isn't too bad though. And I wouldn't devalue what the boys did last year. Fair play to them. So someone making a comment like that is pretty stupid, especially probably that they never won one themselves. So I was obviously directed straight back at his teammate, or his former teammate, I should say, and Anthony Daly. Dalo was very quick to kind of dismiss this. He expected it was going to be the start of the podcast today, and he basically kind of said, well, look, I thought myself and Davy Fitz were getting on fairly well with RT last year. Maybe that's not the case then. And he kind of swiftly moved on and said, look, I made my comments and Davy has made mine. James, where do you stand on this debate about the importance of the league, and has its importance been diluted by the way that the championship's been structured over the last few seasons?
Personally, I take great pride in the fact that I've a couple of league belts. Any competition you enter as an intercounty hurler, you want to win. So when you actually come out on top on a competition like that, it's fabulous. When people say devalued, there's a couple of different ways to look at this. People think the league is somewhat devalued because Limerick have been so dominant in the championship and not been dominant in the league. And we know that it's all about the championship. Okay, so there's like this mythical thing out there that teams don't have to go try and win the league, because you see what happened in Waterford last year and what happened in Limerick, and the contrasting differences in championship and league each other. So I don't know. There's arguments to be made to and for, right? Personally speaking, the league is a fabulous competition. It's great to go down to, as a Limerick player, imagine going down to Cork with 20,000 people there. Fabulous. Same with Galway, going down to Wexford. So, and every game you take as a hurler, you want to win it, regardless of competition. So it's not as if, if you were, I don't know, Barry Murphy playing for Limerick there on Saturday, and you're looking around going, geez, we haven't got, Jimmy Burns today. He didn't give a shit about Jimmy Burns. All he cares about is himself and winning for Limerick, And that's the importance of the occasion at present. And I know it looks a bit congested. There's a lot of games to come between now and even in the championship. It's not that many split weeks, but as a player, it's fabulous to have games on a recurrent basis every week or 2 weeks, or what used to be drive you nuts. You'd be waiting 4 or 5 weeks for a championship game, because you want to bring the ratio of training to games way down. You want them to get nearly to parity, which is, I know, not possible. But the more games you play as a hurler, the better, because ultimately that's what you want to do. So I think the structures are fine. Everything's okay. So just don't panic. Let's keep going.
Paul, do you reckon there's an argument to be made that the league means something different to different teams, whereby if you are Limerick and you've had all this success and you know exactly how to structure your year, therefore you would understandably be looking at provincial and All-Ireland Championship as your primary focus. But if you're a team who's maybe trying to build into it, and I know Michael Dyken was writing in the Daily Mail about this yesterday, that the league could be a fantastic springboard for Galway, for example, and an opportunity to get some silverware and then push on to it later in the year, that maybe it might just be a case of some teams are going to have different aspirations about what the league actually means to them.
Yeah, that's it. And if you have a team who hasn't won any silverware over the last few years, if you have a group of players that haven't, I suppose, broken that glass ceiling to actually go and win a trophy, it's an ideal opportunity for them to go and do it, because the league makes for a great championship, because teams are blooding players, they're sharpening their skills, they're getting their touch in all these things, they're getting their game plan, and that's what allowed us to have a good championship, because teams are ready to rock when it comes to the championship. The only problem with the league at the moment, it is just how close it is to the championship. Years ago when we would have played the league, it was 6 weeks after the championship. And I always remember even saying, let's say if you won the league, we'd be all saying to each other, geez, championship is only in 6 weeks, only, where 6 weeks, a lot of people think that's a long time, but it's the perfect preparation time. So now, where you could go whole hog for the league before and go and win it. I picked up a few injuries. They'd be fine by the time championship comes around. That's not the case. I think that's what teams are referencing at the moment. Limerick don't need to go and win the league. So they can just go, their game plan or their year is planned solely for one match, and it's the All-Ireland final. And not peaking before then is their priority. But like you said, other teams, it's different. So other teams may come along and say, yeah, we want to win the league because that would be a savage boost for our panel. It would show that we can go and test our mettle and win, and that it's not a mental block for us, all these different things. But it's just the fact it's so close to championship at the moment. It's not a benign thing. The league is important, and there's a lot of good stuff happens in the league. It's just where it's positioned now at the moment doesn't allow teams to go whole hog first, particularly the teams that have real intentions of going for the All-Ireland. They will not want to pick up injuries towards the latter end of the league because that could derail them in their provincial championships then. So you're fully right, Will. Like that's exactly it. Each team will have their own priority. But I do think you will see teams towards the end of the league, the likes of Limerick and that, Limerick can still put out a very strong team while holding lads in reserve, So each team will be trying to balance it as best they can. But if there's any doubt on any players coming down the final straight of the league, you won't see them playing because they're going to have to be facing into a savage round robin into, provincial semi-finals, provincial finals if you're going well, and you need them fresh. So that's the way teams will be looking at it. And I think if you look at the likes of Cork or Limerick or wherever, let's say if Cork are going well in the end of the league and Patrick Horgan has a few niggles, you won't see him playing at the end, and so be it if Cork don't win it. But it's just that the championship, you're judged on championship, and that's it. So the unfortunate thing at the league at the moment is just how close it is to the championship. But I don't think it demeans it.
Yeah, I think the aforementioned Dalo made a very good point on League Sunday last night too, where he said one of the biggest issues about having such a tight season is having semi-finals within the league as things stand. That in a way, maybe if you took an extra little bit of that strain of games away and had just a straight final between the teams who top 1A and 1B, that might also make it a bit easier for the preparation for extra teams. And to your point about things maybe tailing off for sides towards the end, I thought Christy O'Connor wrote quite well about this in the Examiner this morning, where he said it is one of those kind of curiosities of the hurling league, and maybe it was reflected with the big attendances that were there for weekend one, which is start of the year, everyone's intrigued to see how teams are going, and these fixtures look really, really tasty at the start. And then maybe a fixture that might look good, that's down for the last weekend. Naturally enough, managers are thinking, you know what, we're only a couple of weeks away from the provincial championship starting, which is effectively another league. And so therefore, we're going to put our priority into that. And maybe you could have teams who are in a position to be in a semi-final quite early in either 1A and 1B as well. So an imperfect system, but I think the league is still has plenty of merit in it. The other games in 1B, James, about Tipperary, I don't know, and again, this brings me around to power ranking to a certain extent, but I'm not 100% sure where we put Tipperary going into this season, because I think Liam Cahill has done some interesting things that we saw in the Laois game at the weekend. So Tip won 232 to 18 points in the end. It was the Battle of Ballingarry. Willie Maher up against Liam Cahill, two clubmates on the sidelines for either team. But a few different positional switches that Tipperary made could be maybe beneficial as the year goes on. So Ford is on the bench, and we've been talking about Ford dependency for scorers, yet they're able to share 14 scorers throughout the team, which has to be a plus for them. Then you look at the fact that Breen has gone in to fill a gap at full-back. Ronan Maher goes to centre-half back, which is a position that they've needed to fill really for a couple of years now. And then you've Bonner Maher coming back in to play at full forward. And rather than being a scoring full forward, he was there to be mischievous and to create chances for his teammates, which is what he did. To me, there's the signs of a good structure around that Tipperary team right now. There's plenty of talent across their panel. We know that Liam Cahill is a good manager. Tipperary could shoot right up our power rankings here.
Yeah, I do expect them to. I said a while ago, I just didn't know where they're at, because it's very hard to gauge a team who came off, I suppose, a season last year that they wouldn't have liked to finish the way it did with a new manager. So you need to give them a bit of time, a few games before we can actually assess them. I think they've moved this week. Is it Clare this week? No, not Clare. Sorry,
they've Kilkenny this week.
Kilkenny this week, yeah. So that's again, that brings out the dog in every Kilkenny and Tipperary man for some reason. So that'll be a good game. That'll be a test again, But again, it's exactly what Murph said. The league is there to see what they have. I think Liam Cahill will use that. He'll use the league to blood new guys. And you mentioned Jesse Ford. I don't think he came on against Laois, did he? I don't think he even played.
No, and if he did come on, I think it was very late in the game. So they left Gerard O'Connor to hit the freeze, and he put 11 in between the posts. So again, we talk about free takers. They've had to maybe just think towards the future a little bit here, because it's not going to be Callan and Ford forever who are going to be hitting them. And then you get a guy who comes in, plays well, scores 11 points. I say they shared the scores around very well on the team. This is a different type of test this week. But again, this is, I suppose, a case as well of Liam Cahill knows an awful lot of these young lads who he's worked with before.
He has, yeah. And Tip have history. I would, this would be a big point for me. I would always say, when you're Kilkenny, Cork or Tipperary, if you're on a panel with them, on that panel for, let's say, 10 or 11 years, you're in with a super shout to get in Ireland. And that never leaves them. So Tip will always have they'll always have a good team, a competitive team, good hurlers, and they have history behind them. So I think Liam Cahill he's a good mix. I mean, he's a good guy to have in charter tip. He's a good persona. Like, you can tell by the way he operates in sideline and the way he has his interviews that like he's got a bit about him. There's I won't quite say it an aura, but he commands respect, if you like, And so when you have a guy who has good structures like Liam Cahill, obviously has good systems, game plans in place like we've seen before, and it mixes in some good hurlers, it'll be interesting to see where they go. Like, I'd like to see more blooding, if you like. Jake Morris, he came on the last day, as you said yourself, we're not going to have Seamus Canlan, Bonner, Jason Ford, Noel McGrath forever. So it'll be interesting to see who Liam Cahill bloods, because there's going to be a bolter or two that we don't know, if you like, that's going to come out and be on the championship team. And maybe that's Brian O'Mara at the minute. He was the UL captain last year. Like, so they have hurlers, they have an abundance of hurlers. It's just to see what kind of way he moves his pieces around and say for the league to head into championship, but they're dangerous. I personally wouldn't like to meet them.
Yeah, I think Brian O'Mara's passport's been locked down for this year, so that he can't get away. They would love to have had him last year, but what's your feeling about him coming to town to Kilkenny at the weekend, Paul? I mean, this is an interesting fixture early on in the league.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think Derek Lyng will be really looking forward to it. Like, they hurled well at the weekend against Antrim. They seem to be moving the ball really well. Okay, as you'd expect, there was a few falls here and there, but the Tipperary are kind of an unknown quantity at the moment, is what we're saying. So Derek will be hoping to go out, put in a really good performance, obviously come away with the win at home, and the likes of Billy Drennan and these lads to Blanchfield at wing back, and to have a good win against Tipperary in Nolan Park is a test in itself. And then Liam Cahill will have his own priorities, as in he's putting shape on his own team. Like, the likes of Mickey Breen, a full back, for whatever reason he's there, it shows thought as to he has plans. He has plans for each player, and it's nothing's random here, And that's what I always like about Liam Cahill, is that he looks at things a little bit differently, and you get that impression from him. So I think it'll be a really good challenge, and it's going to be, I think it'll be a really good battle inside Nolan Park. Kilkenny and Tipperary, not to be saying it's different to other rivalries, but generally you do get a really good match, a really good test. It's 70 minutes of hard hurling. And I think both teams want that at the moment. Both teams probably had a little bit of I wouldn't say easier matches, but they'd like to be tested a little bit harder than what they were at the weekend, certainly for Tipperary anyway. But yeah, it'll be, for a lot of the younger lads, certainly on display this Sunday. It'll be good test for them coming up against their arch nemesis. But I think we'll see a lot more from what Liam Cahill has in store for Tipperary, and try and make a bit more sense of it, because he is making good moves there. Even Kennedy to wing forward as well, which is an interesting move, and he hurled well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But I think Derek Lyng will be really targeting it now for his lads to say, right lads, this is another step up from Antrim here. Antrim again put it up to us at the weekend, but we're going to face stiffer challenges, and Tipperary at home is a great challenge. So I think both sides will be looking forward to it.
Yeah, I saw Kilkenny a couple times in the Walsh Cup, and I always got that feeling that it's going to be slightly different when the Ballyhale players come back in, naturally. But Drennan has been given his opportunity to be very much to the fore here. I remember watching him in the minor final in 2019, and even in a losing effort, it was very clear this guy's a very promising hurler. And now he's got that bit of a run when the boys have been away, but obviously Owen Cody's going to come back in. Adrian Mullen, I don't know how long the hamstring is going to keep him out for, but he'll be back. TJ Reid will be coming back in. They're probably going to take very prominent roles, with Cody being captain now this year within that forward line. But does Drennan have a place as we go through the league and the championship within the starting six up front?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I think he really set his stall out there at the weekend. He was excellent. And excellent from the point of view that we were talking about other teams having ball winners that make the ball stick when it goes into full forward line. You gave him any type of ball, it was just sticking. He just seemed so cool, so calm. It's like he was there years. You wouldn't, if no one told you any different, you wouldn't have picked him out as a debutant in the league for Kilkenny. A good few balls came in, and his man was on him, sticking really tightly to him, putting a lot of pressure, and he was getting the hand to the ball, making it stick, and then looking to pop the ball off. I mean, his goal was brilliant. He ran through the middle, and straight away you knew he's going for goal. He took the shot from outside the 21, but really clever, bounced it into the ground, made it hard on the keeper, and then just kept tipping away with the freeze as well. Again, like Corrigan Park, especially in the second half, the rain was terrible, and he just kept popping over the freeze, which was really important. And in from play, he was contributing from play as well. So I think he does. They alluded to it on the Sunday game last night, where they were just saying that it maybe is an element where if this fella's making the ball stick, he's another target man that will distract away from the likes of TJ. You know, he brings another element. And like you said, Adrian Mullen, Owen Cody will come in. They're all different players in their own way, but I do think there's a place for Billy Drennan come championship. If he keeps tipping away with what he's doing, I mean, there's no fear of him starting for championship. And again, that competition is brilliant, that there's more lads knocking on the door to get into this Kilkenny team.
And Paul, just on Kilkenny, have you noticed a difference in how they've been hurling under the new management compared to, say, Cody last year, even at this early stage, just having 3 or 4 games watched now?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say different. It's maybe just another step on. Like obviously Kilkenny maybe took a little bit longer coming to the game in terms of working the ball through the lines and different things. And certainly against Wexford last year, you know, all the talk afterwards was saying the long balls they struck. But they've shown that obviously they are able to mix it. But particularly at the weekend, there was no panic. Quite a common theme was actually spreading the ball laterally across the pitch. They'd get it at one side, Antrim lads would be closing in, and one long ball straight across, and really well picked out. You know, it wasn't just spraying a random ball. Their touch looked really well, and even when they got into crowded places, you know, where they're surrounded by Antrim men, they were able to work the ball out. There was thought into what they were doing. There was always a supporting runner. So you could see that definitely Derek knows what he's about. His management know what they're about. They look physically really in a good condition as well. So you can see that they know where they're going. And I was actually surprised to see how sharp they were at the weekend. And I was watching on GA Go, and the commentators were saying that Derek Lyng wouldn't be happy with how the team were playing because they hit a few wides and different things. But I think Derek Lyng would have been happy with the weekend. Corringham Park is not an easy place to go. And at any time where Antrim came within touch and distance, they showed the maturity to keep them at arm's length, turn the game into a 2-score game. If Antrim brought it back to 2 or 3 points, Kilkenny reset and went, okay, get another 2 scores here, back to 4 points, and then just pushed on and won by, I think it was 6 in the end. So things like that, Derek could be like, yeah, that's good. That's what we want to do. And we're hurling well, and we have people, you know, coming off the bench contributing. So there's lots of positives there. So I think Derek will be happy.
Yeah, I think probably the main story that came out of Division 2A the weekend was something that happened off the field, which was somebody who was on the Meath GA PR team has now stepped away today. On the back of it, they've made an apology to Down. Tweet that was up about Offaly's win away from home against Down in Division 2A yesterday. Someone who was logged in with the Meath account called Ballycran a kip, which probably wasn't the smartest move on their part. But it's clear that they weren't speaking on Meath GA's part, but understandably Down were very annoyed. It's an area where they try and promote hurling, and they play games around various different venues within Down as well as part of that. And Ballycran's one of those areas they make a real big effort for it, and they gave Offaly a good run of it yesterday. Offaly coming out by 3-point winners in the end, 21 points to 18. The team relegated from Division 1 last year, and the other 2 games are very one-sided on Saturday. So Kildare, who people are looking at as potential dark horses for promotion from 2A, defeating Carlow 25 points to 11 in the end, and Kerry got a comfortable victory to start away from home against Derry by 22 points to 13. So that was the first weekend in Division 2A. Some of the other questions and talking points that came in for us, lads. This one was directly to you, Skehill, and you were called Mr. Skehill by Derek Gavin 7. That might be the first time outside the court you could call Mr. Skehill. But what are Mr. Skehill's views on the smart slitter?
Just to get this right now, so I don't have this in a pickle. So the smart slitter is just a standardized ball. It's not. It can be made by a whole host of manufacturers. That's right.
Yes. I had to look this up to be 100% sure.
Yeah.
The 2 manufacturers are Greenfields and O'Neill's currently. But more can come in as long as they meet the standards. So I remember we chatted about this a bit with the under-20s last year. So about it being the standardised slitter. So the mass has to be between 110 and 116 grams. There are rules around the rim height and also the rim width. And there's going to be a microchip inside the ball, so it can be verified that both the ball has come from a manufacturer where it's been standardised, and also that it is an official match ball. So this is your new yellowy green ball, which has a smart slitter mark on it, and it's got a microchip in it. And this year is the first time it's been at senior level.
Yeah, I personally will. I don't mind it. I think it's progressive. Like at least there's again, we used the word a while ago, clarity, because trust me, there has been 10 different types of ball used in championship, either in club or county. We played a club game a couple of years ago. I'll never forget it because I had to pick the ball out of the net. We scored a point the far side. It's a semi-final, and their opposition goal, they poked out a ball before the ball had gone over the bar. And I remember that your man shot the ball past me at such a pace, like that I barely even saw it. When I picked the ball in the net, it was like a sponge, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And I was saying at that time, sometimes I don't know about these balls because there's such variance. And, you know, that's my reason, Murph. That's why the ball went past me. there's such variance in it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand we talk about distance and all that kind of stuff, but like if we can get one universal set of standards, which is obviously the objective of the Smash Litter, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I still have a problem with the colour.
Yeah, you were telling me earlier you went off and bought a bag of white balls because they were on sale.
Yeah, exactly, because all the balls are going white. So I saw an opportunity get as many white, or all the balls are going yellow, should I say, this year. So I said I'd buy as many white balls. So the club were happy when I came back with a deal.
What do you reckon, Paul? I mean, obviously you're not as affected. I'd say this is probably why this was directed at Skehill, was because there's always been the myth of the goalkeeper having a bag of balls, and they'd have a winter ball maybe, or something that they would throw out for a 65 or for a penalty at a vital stage during the game.
That's true.
I no doubt it's true. I've heard of goalkeepers. I think I've heard you talk about it last year when we're done with the 20s, but probably didn't affect you as much, Paul, as it was affect Skehill there and his dark motives maybe with the bag of balls he brings with him.
Yeah, no, it's good. You know, it's good because all these kind of, I suppose, games, in terms of the mind games and different things that lads play, maybe I don't know, is that as prevalent at the moment? I remember we go back into the early 2000s and Joan Logan then with the towel taking a free and stuff, and a new ball that we brought in, and all these different games were going on. But yeah, like I think particularly the likes of, I don't know how far it's going to be rolled out, but you know, certainly in club matches it's rampant at times. I mean, the balls that are flying around on the pitch, like it might say a size 5 in them, but some of them are borderline size 4 and different things like this, like, you know, and it's mayhem. It's mayhem at times. But at inter-county level, I don't know if it happens as much, but certainly when you see some of the discussions and the talking points we have over the years and the fine margins that some things come down to, if at least you take that out of the equation, that you know that the ball is, everything's above board, we don't need to talk about it, and it's chipped, happy days. So look, it's a good introduction. But yeah, I've far less of an opinion than Mr. Skehill.
Right. Last question of the day then goes to Cahill Mac 79, who I know is a regular viewer of the pod and listener to the pod last year. Welcome back, lads. Name your new players to watch out for in 2023. That's from Colin McCarthy. I don't mind which one he wants to go first in this, lads. Your players to watch.
I'll let James. I'll double on all his suggestions then.
No, I think Murph, you're going to stick with Billy Drennan, I'd imagine. And I'm going to go with a lad he faced last year. So Liam Collins now. There's an element of bias here, I will admit. He's my club mate. But when Kilkenny played Galway in the 20s last year, Brennan got 17 points, 16 frees, and Liam got 12 points, 6 frees. So like, he's a good talent as well. He came on against Wexford the weekend. Obviously, he could have had a goal that came off the crossbar. And I wonder how much he'll be used because he's quite young. He's a fabulous prospect. We're very lucky to have him in our club, and I think he'll go on to make a name for himself nationally.
Is it Drennan for you then, Murph, or is there someone else you know around the country that stands out?
No, yeah, well, I think Billy Drennan is the obvious choice. But like I even mentioned, the likes of Oisin Pepper earlier, like great player, like was obviously coming onto the scene, I think in his leaving cert year and things. But there's, you know, I think between the likes of them, Billy seems to be, I suppose, if the platform isn't created for the likes of Oisin Pepper for Wexford to go further in the championship, we may not see as much of them as we'd like to see. But it looks like the likes of Billy Drennan will be kind of a revelation with Kilkenny. So yeah, if we're picking one, he seems to be a good bet at the moment. I'd say he'll stick around for the year in terms of being consistently in this Kilkenny team. And yeah, look, I mean, I saw him in the under-20 final as well last year, and we were talking about him here in the pod. He was excellent. That's not to heap too much praise on him either, that you're building him up too much. He just looks like a really good player, and has so many skills at his disposal that it's exciting as a Kilkenny supporter to see a player like this coming through, and with what else is to come back. So it's it's good. It's great to have a player like him on the scene.
Excellent. Well, look, excited to keep track on both of them as we work through. Good weekend coming up between Galway against Cork, Limerick and Clare, and also Kilkenny against Tipperary. So looking forward to episode 2 already. Lads, have a good weekend.
Sound, lads.
Cheers, folks.